Morning on ITV. I told you that yesterday in London, Nigeria Air was launched, and the federal government says it is looking for investors in that sector. But it is good to take a little history of what happened and what made the Nigeria Airways to cease to exist. In 1958, October 1, 1958, Nigeria Airways started operation. It was formerly known as West Africa Airway Corporation until it ceased operation in 2003. We'll be looking at the history, how it ceased operation and the relaunch of Nigeria Air about 15 years after. And I have in the studio an aviation freak. He's an expert in that field and knows so much. So you are sure going to be hearing so much about Nigeria Airways. We have in the studio Godike. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Gabriel. Good morning.
Yes. And I still have in the studio Lulu Banko.
And welcome to the program.
Okay. So we're going to be looking at the circumstances. That company was liquidated by the former President Olusegun Obasanjo in 2003. Mr. Godike, before we go into talking history, I just want to know, would it have been better to concession that company or to privatize it instead of liquidating it completely, taking into cognizance the assets it had?
Yeah, Nigeria Airways, answering your question directly, Nigeria Airways should have been privatized. It made no sense liquidating that airline. It still breaks my heart. Every time I think about Nigeria Airways, I just wonder who the hell made that decision. And it was very, very shameful and very painful. It had absolutely no business happening. You know, we had an airline whose pilots were adjudged by the world to be the best in the world. Their safety record was unmatched by anyone in this entire globe. That's how good Nigerian Airways pilots were. Now, come to management. Management was very poor. As a matter of fact, extremely irresponsible. I remember as a young businessman at the time, I used to fly between Lagos and London virtually every 2 weeks. And
directly?
Yes.
You don't have to connect to another country before you go to London?
No. In the Apapa office of where Nigeria Airways had is, should I call it headquarters that they had there at the time, or was it one of their big sales offices? Somewhere not far away from the Apapa port. They had a massive office in that place, and that was where I bought my ticket all the time. I was nicknamed there, Must Fly. Yes. As a matter of fact, it's only recently after researching into what went on in Nigeria Airways that I realized how they provided seats. Each time I got into that office, somebody would just look up and say, oh, Must Fly is here. And they will announce to me that the flight that I wanted to go by was full, but I should just take a seat. And after a while, they came up with a ticket for me. And of course, I parted with some small extras, but I didn't know how that happened and what was going on. Only to realize later on, after the liquidation, that a whole lot of irresponsible activities went on. You had an airline that each time there was a trip from Lagos to Heathrow Airport in London, half of the seats were occupied by non-paying government official passengers, non-paying Nigeria Airways workers, and non-paying friends and colleagues of those who were movers and shakers of the airline at the time. And then you just wonder, how, knowing that aviation is an expensive business. As a matter of fact, every penny you rake in, minimum of 40% of that money will be required by those airplanes that are doing the job. So, if you really want to run an airline responsibly, all your gross takings, you must set aside 40% minimum. Better still, 50% as money that you don't own. You don't touch it. No matter what the temptation or what the pressure is, you don't touch it. Because if you want to stay alive as an airline, the volume of money in question, no matter how many trillions they run into, someday those airplanes will need them. And when they need them, you must spend them in order to keep those faithful. You know, I describe airplanes as faithful machines. They are very faithful machines. They are built well, and they are really, built to serve. The reason they fall off the skies is that human operators can be very unfaithful and dishonest, and that's why airplanes fall off the skies. Ordinarily, if you were to do things in accordance with the books and the schedule of maintenance,
it serve you at all times.
Yes, all the time. So that's in a summary what went wrong with Nigeria Airways. If only the government in power at the time had pulled together intelligent experts, and not just intelligent experts, but patriotic ones, for that matter. Because one thing is to know what is right and what's wrong. Another is to have sense of patriotism that drives you to saying, hey, this is not proper.
Okay.
So when you heard that Nigerian Air was launched in London or unveiled in London, what were your thoughts? What ran through your mind, considering the fact that you knew so much about the Nigerian Airways?
Well, remember, hints have been dropped. Hints have been dropped that this was going to happen. That we were going to have a national airline. I still remain a supporter of setting up a national airline. If nothing else, it keeps a whole lot of money here with us. The likes of British Airways, South African Airlines, Ethiopian, Kenyan Airways, name them. You cannot imagine the volume of money that they are cutting away from this nation. It's unbelievable. Nigerians are, big travelers. And, there's no part of the world you don't find a good percentage of Nigerians occupying space there. And they go by air. And so these airlines are busy making huge sums of money that should have stayed with us here if we had our own airline. That's number one. Number two, pride of place. It's a thing of pride to stay in some foreign nation and you find one airplane cruising in to touch down and you look through and what do you find there? Nigeria Air. As a Nigerian, you feel good. Yes. You feel respected. You feel respectable. And you have that fulfillment that, hey, that's my national flag, coming into this great nation. And so for those two reasons, we should have a national, airline. However, if we must do this one that we are, up to right now, we must do it more responsibly.
Oh, okay.
So do you think the method the government is using now, as opposed to what you had said earlier, that so many of the government officials were being irresponsible, and even the staff of the company, where they go on board without pay. The private driven now, as announced yesterday by the Minister of State for Aviation, do you think is the right way to go?
It is a right way to go. However, we must keep a tab on them, keep watch, during employment, it must be done professionally. Those that will interview would get the best available from all sections of the country, and it's not going to be a situation where somebody somewhere would bring a pack of ignorant individuals and simply issue instruction, please put them there. And they get there for the sake of occupying space and not getting the job done. Of course, that won't help. And it's not a case of using it for patronage. You want to patronize some political friend or some individual somewhere, you call in a few, some untrained individuals that are not even required. Because one thing is to employ people that are required for the job. Another is to have a pack of unnecessary and unneeded individuals in the system, just sitting down there collecting salaries at the end of the month and mounting financial pressure on the airline. Those are some of the things that can happen and that we see happening all the time in most of the agencies that government is involved. And so we want to be sure that this time is going to be done responsibly and professionally. For as long as that is in place, aviation or airline business is a profitable business.
Okay, so now
it is profitable business.
when it eventually becomes functional, as they're projecting December, what economic impact is that going to have on the Nigerian economy?
Quite a lot, a whole lot. First of all, I expect that ticket fares will be driven down. Cost of traveling, especially intercontinental traveling, will definitely come down. Because this time around, more of the cost of operation will be Naira denominated. I do know that maintenance will still be done abroad. You know, they will still require some foreign exchange, you know, to get some of the jobs on board. A whole lot will be denominated in Naira. And that should be able to drive costs down. The reason some of these airlines you know, are getting, you know, too expensive for us is the fact that most of their costs are forex denominated. I mean, the crew will be paid in foreign exchange. Some of the services they offer in the airplanes will be bought abroad. Name it. Virtually everything that they offer us. So before they take out the minimum cost of giving us the services, they punch the calculator. These days, when we are doing $3.60 per dollar here, they will do $3.80. I tried to pay my daughter's school fees, you know, yesterday, and then I went through the school, you know, online system. You know what they posted there? 380 Naira per dollar, when the official thing that we are doing here is 360. And I said, no, I'm going to buy, you know, from the you know, alternate market for 360 and find a way to get it across to them. I'm not going to do this. This is just telling us, you guys are a bunch of helpless individuals. No, we must say we are, or we can. I mean, we can help ourselves. So I mean, we can't go on this way as a people and as a nation. So coming back to what we're discussing, the fact that we're going to have individuals that are Nigerians who will be working there, who will be paid in Naira. I am not saying that they should not be paid well. They should be paid well, because money will, a whole lot of money will be, you know, raked in. Patriotism should drive Nigerians to patronize this new airline. I don't see any of them leaving for any part of the country or any part of the world with a single seat not occupied. That's one thing Nigerians should do for this airline. I mean, we have a lot of very smart and intelligent pilots. A lot of them are quite young. I mean, I flew from Lagos 2 weeks ago, and then I looked into the cockpit to say hello. I usually do that as a freak of aviation. I looked into the cockpit to say hello to the pilots, and I saw this not more than 25, 26-year young lady, you know, as a co-pilot. I doffed my hat for her. I said, keep it up, good job. You know, very young lady. In one of the airlines, and I'm not going to call their name because they haven't paid for the advert.
That's true. That's true. Okay.
Right. Yes.
Okay.
So what I'm saying, in fact, is that we've got good hands. We've got smart young pilots. The older ones who can train and get engaged as consultants to really, you know, train in various, you know, fields of how to do it well. Can also be engaged as consultants to continue to train. We have the best in this country. We do. It's just that, for some strange reason, you know, successive administrations in this country just decided to run riot with irresponsibility. That's all.
Okay. Now I did a very quick calculation, and I discovered that Nigeria Airways ran for about 45 years. And you did admit to the fact that we had the best pilots.
Yes,
and
we did.
Recognize that. There has been so much of training in aviation schools. I know we have one in Kwara State. I know we have one in Zaria, and a lot of training.
Correct.
So when you talked about maintenance, you know, maintaining our aircraft abroad, and you talk about, you know, having the manpower needed. Does it mean something is wrong somewhere, that our airplanes cannot be maintained in the country until
it's just political will, just political will to make a decision that we want to have these things here. I mean, a lot of the engineers that do these jobs out there are also Nigerians. You want to believe it? My immediate elder brother retired from NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. I say my immediate elder brother, same father, same mother. He retired from NASA in the United States of America, one of the best engineers, you know, in there.
It's a Nigerian.
Lewi, Anambra, Nigeria. He still lives there. And so what are we saying? We have Nigerians in all fields. By the way, with all due humility, to tell you how we have a lot of fantastic people all over the world. My own son is a first-class cardiologist. Currently, he just moved from Russia to UK just a few weeks ago. Scrambled by all the big hospitals right now to grab him. He made first class in medicine, made first class in his cardiology specialist, my own son, Nigerian. They're all over the places. Nigerians are all over the places doing well. But the thing is that we have a systemic problem here that we need to deal with. So we can begin to attract these people to come here and add value. I've personally begged my son to come. You know what he said to me? Daddy, am I going to come here and work with bare hands? That was what he said to me. I mean, last December, I lost a very bosom good friend of mine who succumbed to heart attack. And when I shared with my son, he screamed and screamed and said, Daddy, this thing does not kill that way anymore. You guys are just joking there. That's what he said to me. He was screaming at me as if I was the one responsible for the downstairs. So we have good hands.
Yes, we're talking about a new airline, a new carrier for the country.
Yes.
Now, looking at the airports around the country, do you think we have the capacity?
We need to build on capacity. We need to build on infrastructure. That's why, I mean, talking about setting up hangars and having appropriate equipment installed, we can afford them, financially speaking. We can afford them. We can have people trained to deal with all this here. It's just to have the political will and the sense of oneness. Mind my language. Political will and sense of oneness. We are still operating like different nations sitting in one space. And I often say, my heart bleeds, very honestly, Gabriel. my heart bleeds. This is one of the loveliest nations that God put on earth. Gave us everything it takes to be one of the greatest in the world. Well, do we have to go the way of Rwanda before we realize that we should throw away ethnicity, throw away religion, and throw away everything? I mean, they had to slaughter themselves, almost to ground zero before they got together. Today in Rwanda, go to Kigali. My wife was there not too long ago and came home with some, wonderful, news and I've been following up, also reading up about, what the Paul Kagame man, is doing there. For the fourth or fifth time, 50 year, CNN is still announcing that they remain the best and easiest place to do business in the whole of Africa. After that genocide that took place there. Is that what we want? Must we go through that way before we begin to harness our potentials? Come on!
Now the government is talking about buying new airplanes. And meanwhile, there are some planes here that AMCON even acquired from those who were, AMCON. And so I was thinking, should they not start with those ones that AMCON possessed, and then maybe gradually they can begin to build on those ones and begin to buy new?
Well, in addition to that shortly, sir, if we are going to run a national carrier, how many planes do we need to start with?
That's a very tricky one. Yes, it's a tricky one. A mix of old and new is not a bad idea.
Okay.
A mix of old and new, it's not a bad idea. It's good to have new ones, and it's also. But I want to tell you, in all reality, airplanes are as new as their maintenance.
Okay.
A 6-month-old airplane that is due for an air check, and it misses the air check. A 20-year-old that is due for a D check or a C check, as the case may be, depending on how many hours he's put in, that has successfully undergone and sincerely undergone the check, is safer and better than the 6-month-old that is due for a check and it's not done.
Okay,
so that's the nature of airplane. It's not about being brand new or being old, it's about maintenance. Once you are following the log and keeping to the schedule of maintenance, those machines are faithful, they will serve you well. Yeah, go ahead.
So, but, the minister talks about looking for investors at in the UK. So now, and this projection is that by December. It's supposed to begin. So they are still looking for investors, and they're talking about public-private partnership. Is it that the government is going to start first, and then when they get investors, then those investors will now come in as to partner with the government, because they said the government would take 5%, and then the private investors will be, say, 95%. And at this point now, they are looking for investors in the UK, the opportunity, they use that to be looking for those investors. Now, there are things that they are supposed to put in place before that. Is the government now going to use its own money to begin to buy these planes, and then when investors come in, they begin to refund to government, or how is that going to play out?
My dear Lulu, I am not going to speculate here because I haven't had a chance to speak with the Honorable Ministers, Sherika, to know exactly how their minds are working and what they plan to do. However, if government, with a sense of urgency, for instance, decides to invest money and get the money back, it's not bad. Get it going, get it running, and then when investors come, get back your money and hand over the project to them to run with. However way they plan to do it, what's important is that it must be done responsibly. That is the most important thing to ensure that the airline succeeds. So it's my hope that when they are back to the country, one would seek to have an audience, ask a few questions, get to know what they, and then make some suggestions to them, and see how we take it through. But I tell you, with the population that we have here, with the patronage that Nigerians make, to airline business, if we run our airline well and responsibly. Mark my word, how many times have I used this word responsibly in this studio? That is a key word. That is a watchword. We must run this airline responsibly. If we do, it will succeed and we'll be all proud of it.
Okay, staff of the Nigerian Airways are already threatening that if they are not settled, that this new Nigerian Air would not function. They will not allow it to function. Do you see that as a threat?
A threat it is definitely, but then it's unfair over these years to old people who served this nation for that long, and nobody has thought it wise to make it a priority. It's all part of why we lack, patriotism and patriotic people. I often tell the stories about experiences of people around the world. Taking it to aviation, you remember during the Second Gulf War, one of the America's F-117 stealth fighter bomber was shot down, right over enemy territory in Iraq. And the American government was said to have deployed main materials and equipment valued at $2.3 billion to move in there and pluck the young man who, when his plane was shot and damaged, and he knew he was going to crash, he bailed out of the airplane with his parachute, landed safely, but in the midst of enemy territory, and the enemy troops were advancing to pick him up and slaughter him. But American government moved in and said to have put in place, at risk, $2.3 billion just to pluck that young pilot, and they took him home unharmed. Tell me, when and how on earth will that young man and his family be unpatriotic to the United States of America? Never. Okay. If you were in their shoes, would you ever be unpatriotic? That is the sort of thing that we need the government to begin to put value. I often ask, what is the value of a Nigerian? If the value of an American is a minimum of $2.3 billion, I mean, I'm talking about value of life now. What is the value of the life of a Nigerian? Look at the ugly story that was told about a young lady that was shot, a few days ago, and then there's this banter going back and forth about what happened at the Garki hospital where she was taken and stuff like. How can we continue to hear this kind of silly and very irresponsible sounding stories in a country that is as great as this nation, well-blessed nation? We must put an end to the nonsense, one way or the other.
It's a very sad one, but as we begin to round up,
yes.
How do we ensure that this national carrier run without debt? Because as at the time of closure, the debt
of Nigeria Airways
it had was about $528 million.
That's correct.
And when you value it in 2017, it was around $702 million. So how do we run it without acquiring that debt?
The same watchword: running according to the rules and running responsibly. An airline business can pay all its debts. You just have to be sure of the people you need, train them well to do the job the way it's supposed to be done. Remember, you're serving the people, you're serving the public, and the only thing that gets anyone come back to you is when he or she is well treated. All right? Well, I must tell you, there's something to contend with. As a people, at the moment, we have an attitude, and somebody has got to resist that attitude. Because I often see that when my fellow Nigerians get into foreign airlines, they conduct themselves well. when they find themselves in the local, Nigerian airline, they get really wild. And the whole idea is that the law will not take its toll, and nobody is going to insist and ensure that anybody who does anything wrong gets reined in. And that is the problem. So they've got to watch out for that. Otherwise, once you make it one of those noisy and reckless environment, of course, foreigners will keep away from our airlines and then go elsewhere.
The cancellations of flights with no excuse.
That's correct. That's correct. I mean, I once shared an experience that I had that was in Houston, Texas, with one of the foreign airlines when they couldn't carry us for some strange reasons. They asked us, please, so sorry about this, put us in a beautiful hotel around the airport and paid us 900 euros on top of free meal, free hotel room and everything, and free transportation to and fro the hotel. That's how to do it. Okay. Next time I want to fly them again.
Okay, thank you so much. We've been talking for over 30 minutes, and it seems as if we just started. And he can talk about this over and over again, but time is no longer our friend. We just have to go now. But we'll continue discussion on this topic as we are expecting it to be launched formally in Nigeria by December this year. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
All right, I appreciate it.
And I take some things from this interview. Responsibility.
That's correct.
And an aircraft is as new as its maintenance.
That's correct.
Patriotism for Nigeria. So we just need to put our hands together to ensure that this work very efficiently for us, to give us that pride of nation, and to ensure that we are proud anywhere we see Nigeria Airways. We now wrap up this segment of interview on the program. When we return, we'll be taking another interview. Thanks for staying with us.
As you wake up in the morning,